Welcome to the Church Podcast, talking all things ministry so you can do church better. I'm your host, Christopher Wesley, and I'm really excited about today's episode with my good longtime friend, Cynthia Psencik. Cynthia the way we met, and explain this at the beginning, is we met when she was with the Archdiocese of New York, and I was starting out with Marathon Youth Ministry. But now Cynthia is the mentoring program and alumni director at the Given Institute. And so what that means is she focuses a lot on connecting young women with mentors and helping them grow, whether it's professionally or personally, but most importantly, growing their relationship with God and Jesus Christ. And so we talk a lot about women in ministry, women in leadership positions. We dive a little bit into Cynthia's story, which is excellent, especially for those of you who have been in ministry for a long time and might be considering a change. But anyway, I'm not going to spoil anything further, but I hope you enjoy this episode just as much as I do. And if you do, please, as always, leave a review, 5 stars, likes, whatever it is on whatever platform that you're watching or listening this to, because the more that we get the word out there, the more people can hear this stuff to help them make their ministry better. But anyway, without further delay, here's Cynthia.
Okay.
Hey, Cynthia, welcome to the Church Podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
My friends, it is great to see you. I feel like this is our different backgrounds for the both of us, but I'm doing great here in Austin, Texas.
I know. It's it feels like years since we've last talked, which is unfortunate because for those of you who are watching or listening, Cynthia and I have known each other for a number of years, primarily for when she was up here in the Northeast. I say Northeast, and as if Baltimore is really Northeast, and it kind of is. But anyway, I guess when you're down in Texas, everything is Northeast on the East Coast, right? I mean, pretty much, right? So.
Yeah, pretty much.
But before we get lost in catching up on old times, Cynthia, why don't you do us the favor for people who might not know you or maybe know you a little bit? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you for trusting me to spend this time with you. No, thank you for the invitation to be on this podcast. As you mentioned, my name is Cynthia. Last name is Psencik, because I know many listeners who are reading are like, how do you say that last name? So I'm used to it. I don't get offended. Psencik is how you pronounce that last name, thanks to my amazing husband, Evan. I've been married for 8 years, going on 9 years already. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Um, as you mentioned, I currently live in Austin, Texas. It's been about since last August that I moved down here. Prior to that, I was living in the state of Connecticut, but I'm originally from New York City. And something I've learned here in Texas is when I say New York, people take a step back and they're like, wait, you really mean the city, like the city? I'm like, yes, Manhattan. I grew
Right.
up in Manhattan. I grew up in New York City, was living in Connecticut after we got married. My current title, I am the mentoring program and alumni director for an organization that I am just so blessed to be a part of. It's called the Given Institute. I've been there now going on 3 years. And prior to that, I was the director of youth ministry for the Office of Youth Ministry in the great archdiocese, or like Bishop Joe Espaillat loves to say, the archdiocese of New York. And I was in the diocese across different roles, different ministries, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later, for almost 20 years before I started here at the Given Institute. So, yeah, it's been a whirlwind. This past 2 decades have certainly been a whirlwind.
Definitely. And it really is interesting when you think about like working in, especially in one place or one area of ministry for 20 years. And then obviously, like you mentioned, about a year and a half ago, 2 years, well, a little bit more than a year and a half ago, but a couple of years ago, making this huge career change, right, to the Given Institute. And I know that the Given Institute has done amazing things, and we'll dive a little bit more into those things. But again, for people who maybe aren't familiar with the Given Institute, tell us a little bit about what their mission is, what they set out to accomplish to do, and a little bit more about your role at the Given Institute.
Yes, absolutely. So the Given Institute is a not-for-profit organization that we dedicate ourselves to activating the gifts of young adult women 21 to 35 for the church and for the world. And we do that through leadership training, faith formation, and my favorite part, which is the part that I oversee, is a year of mentoring. So these young women attend our flagship program, which actually takes place just in a couple of weeks. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be down at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., where about 160 young women from 21 to 35 all over the United States. Excuse me, some of them even coming internationally from Singapore, the UK, Paraguay, Peru. It's amazing. So these young women come for about a week long just immersion in leadership training, skills training, and faith formation. And after they leave this program, they're paired with a mentor who accompanies them for the year. And one of the unique aspects of what we do as part of the application process, because it is a rigorous application process, you're not just attending an event, you are entering a program, you're entering a cohort. Lovely word I learned from you many years ago. Um, we're entering a cohort where these women are actually journeying together. And as part of their application process, they have to submit an action plan. So it is, how am I using the gifts that God has given me to serve others? So that can be in their community, in their family, their parishes, their work. And another unique aspect is that these young women are not only church ministers, they come from a variety of backgrounds, professions. Some of them are just getting out of just grad school or undergrad, entering their career. We have stay at home mothers, mothers who are looking to entering into career after staying at home. So it's just an array of the beauty of just femininity in our church, covering every aspect. So yeah, so we just work with them, we form them, we just provide them with the resources that they need in this state in their life. And again, part of my role is the mentoring program, which then they enter after they attend our summer program taking place in a few weeks.
That's awesome. I feel like I got a chance to get a sneak preview of the event. What was that, like a couple of years ago? I don't think
Yeah.
you had started quite working for them quite yet. Just so that people know, I didn't sneak into the event. I was actually asked by Stephen, who is our producer, who was filming the event. I think doing live stream for y'all and everything. He needed an extra cameraman, which that's another long story. And I was like, sure. And Cynthia, right, we grabbed a bite to eat and everything there in DC. And it was just really fascinating to see, like you said, the array of women in different roles, from stay-at-home parents to religious, and the different levels of religious sisters out there, and just the variety of things that you talked about. And and so again, I think one of those things that has just fascinated me about Given is how much they're not just investing in young women leaders, but
Mhm.
the promotion of women leadership in not just the Catholic Church, but the world. But let's talk a little bit about the Catholic Church, right? In the sense where I think there's a lot of criticism out there, whether it's fair or not. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. In regards to that, there is no place for women leadership in this patriarchy, right? It's a man-run church, and therefore it's out of date, out of fashion, and needs to catch up with the times, right? Now, I'm going to try not to comment, being a guy and everything like that. So I'm going to default to you. And I know we've talked about this before, but like, what role does the Catholic Church play in supporting and promoting women in leadership positions? And not just within the Given Institute, but even in your experience of working for a diocese.
Yeah. Well, I believe that if you enter a church, who do you see around you?
Hmm.
Women.
Yeah.
Women taking care of their children, women being caretakers, women, on the altar, like, taking care of the decor, or just, the ambiance, and really making it a hospitable place for us to enter. Well, most churches, I like to think,
Hmm.
are beautiful inside. Thanks. Excuse me, thankfully to just the touch of, of women. But As I said earlier, one of the beautiful things that these young women do is submit this action plan. And
Mm,
when I tell you that these action plans are really dedicating to enhancing the ministries in the church, and many of them, just need that guidance. So I think, like, especially for young adult women, and with our program that we have this mentoring, I think equipping our young women with other women, right, that can give them some kind of guidance, who have been there, who have done it. I think that's one of the biggest gifts that we can offer this emerging generation. More and more, when I read these applications, from the mentors especially. So we have, our mentors are as young as 36 and as old as 85. Honestly, we have mentors in an array. So we're talking about the breadth of generations of women who have been in church across different careers, backgrounds, religious sisters, lay women as well, which is another beautiful part of our program. Is not only lay women, but it's also consecrated and religious sisters who are part of our program. So now we're getting the full breadth almost of what our women have been doing in our church. And time again, when I read these applications from the mentors, they're saying, I wish when I was a young person, I had a program like this. I
mm,
wish I had someone that I can speak to when I had questions. I wish I had a mentor that would walk me and just journey with me during my just tough questions as a Catholic woman, when I was entering my marriage, when I was entering being my mother, or entering my vocation, whatever that may be. And if we really invest, our structures really invest in providing this emerging generation in capable and highlighting them, they're in our pews. How many times do we just approach just a woman that comes just on Sunday mass? Maybe not the daily mass. We want to go to all the daily mass goers because we know their name. But how about that one woman that maybe just comes on Sunday, right? And you see her, like, how are we really engaging and understanding that you also have a gift? Many times we want to just approach the person who's always there. But there are so many women in our pews with, I mean, and I'm telling you from my mentors, not women that you would see in big arena, like big Catholic arenas, right? But women who have amazing stories to share. And I think that's one of the beautiful, parts of our program, but also that we can do is really investing in each other's story. And really investing in understanding and listening into, like, what brought you here and why do you come to our church, and then equipping that and having a platform for her to also share that story. And for the young adult women that are emerging, they have great ideas. I'm talking about women. Of these action plans, for example, are new mothers, and they're like, I'm seeing a need for new young mothers. I'm a new mom, and I don't have a space in my church to really
mm.
see other new moms. And my desire is to create a meal train for young mothers, so that people in the parish know that there's a new mom in our community, and that they're cared for. How beautiful is that? And that's something small at the parish. And giving her a platform to do that, giving her permission, or instead of like staying in our silos, that there's a young mother in your pew who feels alone and would like to have other mothers in her pew not feel as alone, and in the pews not feel as alone. So I can go on, but it's just like
Yeah.
little things. Start small. I think sometimes we want to focus on, women leadership and the big structures, but like, there's so much that they can contribute locally, and all they need is the space, and just to share, and the space to really, like, see, share what's in their heart and what their desire, and what are their questions. So I think we creating more of those opportunities, is something that we can certainly work on.
So that's interesting. So these action plans that people are putting together are not necessarily these huge, like high budgeted, like high capacity sort of projects, although some of them are, right?
Yes.
But it's also like giving people permission for, I don't want to minimize the need that you brought up because that's important, but something simple, right? Something that wouldn't take a lot of overturning the system, right, to make that
Hmm.
happen, but just more of acknowledging people's presence and ideas. So take us a little bit through that action plan process. So like, what does an action plan look like? And obviously you have someone who's mentoring and coaching them through that, but give us a little bit more of the details of what that entails.
Yes, absolutely. So at a first glance, it can seem a little intimidating for
Hmm.
the young women. So that's why we provide a lot of, guidance and support throughout the process. So we invite them to think about something that may have been stirring in your heart, that God has been stirring in your heart, that if you had the resources to accomplish it and the support, you would do it. And we usually ask them, don't let it not be an extension of the work you're already doing, or just something that already exists, but it's given like birth to a new idea. And it's interesting and just beautiful, or just providential enough, the time that they have to accomplish it from the moment they leave the forum to like the end of the program is 9 months. And one thing that I didn't mention was that the Given Institute was actually founded by religious sisters, and I know that you mentioned that earlier. Just the beauty of the religious sisters. It really started with a desire from the sisters who were journeying with these young adult women during a what they call an identity crisis. They're like, we're noticing more and more in our ministries, whether that be vocations or just women in that they were accompanying in retreats or whatever their charisms, that they were noticing a common theme. They just need to know that they're beloved daughters of God. So
Yeah.
what would it look like if we brought them all in, have them understand you are a beloved daughter of God, you're seen, you're known and loved, and then send them out into the world sharing this same message to others in their communities. So that's really how this, started in 2016, and it just grew, and this is our fourth forum. So it was actually the sisters' idea, because they're
Mm.
like, okay, we've been to many conferences, people come in and go, and then that's it. No, you need to take what you're learning, and we'll provide you what they call a spiritual mentor at the time. Before now, we're or a spirit, and no, actually they called it accountability sister. And
Mm.
this was an event ran only with sisters. So sisters are running the tech, they're running the small groups, they're running everything. And then they're like, we need some lay women to help support this endeavor. And long story short, that's how lay women and myself, of course, also became involved. So that was their idea, that while they were at the forum, they're ruminating, they're thinking about and speaking through, I have this idea, I have this desire in my heart, I just don't know if that's what I should be doing. So when the women apply now, obviously it's a little bit more formalized. They apply and they provide a title, they provide us with some kind of summary. We ask them to think about an intended audience and who is the recipient, who you be serving with this plan. We ask them for an output, what is your qualitative, quantitative output that you hope to accomplish through this plan. And after, we use that to also gauge their acceptance into the program. We want to invite women who are really thinking and who are really taking the process serious. Then they're paired with an action plan strategist. And this is something that we implemented new this year. And one of the beautiful things about these strategists is that some of them are women alumna. We call them Given alumna, who have been part of the program
Mm.
and already executed their plans. And some of them are mentors that are in our network as well. And the feedback I've been receiving is that, oh my goodness, like, I want to see this plan through. These women are amazing, that they're just being reinvigorated in their own vocations and in their own ministries, just by walking and journeying and answering the questions, making sure that the plan is viable, that it's within the parameters of Given, that it can be accomplished. Because as you can imagine, you ask us, come up with an idea, we're going to come up with an idea.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. That's
can we
awesome.
do this?
Yeah.
But, we want them to make sure that they can accomplish it by the end of the year. Yeah.
No, and that's incredible. I mean, I think it's just one of those things we need in the church as a whole, right? Is just more men and women coming alongside other people to accompany them and to mentor and pour into them and invest in them. And, you and I have talked about this before in regards to when we were doing work together with Marathon in the Archdiocese of New York, that there is such a need for guidance and coaching and cohorts and mentoring, but sometimes it's a little bit of an obstacle for people, right? Or sometimes people I don't want to say refuse it, but don't feel like they're worthy of that, right? And I know that there's probably a long list of some of the challenges that women face when it comes to ministry and leadership. And I can imagine one of them is finding the right kind of support and resources. But what are some of the unique, and maybe speak more about that, but what are some of the unique challenges that you feel like women face in ministry and leadership within the church, especially, but maybe not just limited to the church that Given Institute's addressing? What are some of those things that you see?
Yeah, I would say it's the just understanding that where to go for support.
Mm,
Where to go, who to highlight. I mean, sometimes women come and they don't know that they can reach to their diocese, for example, or that they can approach their pastor with something, with a question, or an idea, right? And myself, as a previous diocesan leader, where some of these questions I'm like, have you checked with your diocese? The diocese usually has some of these resources, and I think, especially diocesan leaders, we can take for granted like everybody knows who we are.
right.
No, they don't. It's
Mm,
not those that are connected. Maybe we have our obviously youth leaders, but the regular Annie and Joe in the pew may not really know that they can go to the diocese to gather a lot of resources. So it's almost like a double-edged sword, because like I remember as a diocesan leader, we're like spewing all these activities and events, and obviously the same people are coming, but it's like, what are we doing to really reach the people who are not being that responsive? So when it comes to that, like with Given and the young adult women, it's like, one, providing them a platform that
mm,
this might be a young adult woman who, I mean, we have women who are entering law school, who are nurses, who are nursing, who are becoming physical physiatrists. We're talking about women across all these secular fields, but sometimes I think we tend to focus on women who are just doing stuff in ministry, right? How are we really inviting these other women who are not called to be a young adult minister or youth minister or campus minister or whatever the ministries are, to really invest in them and their gift and what they have to offer? We think only those that are in church are the ones who have something to offer. So I think we equip these women who come from these variety of backgrounds to really know that you also have a gift. You have a play in salvation history in the body of Christ. And it doesn't have to be a ministry in the church. It doesn't have
mm.
to be something that you do in your parish. I have one of the action plans who wants to create something with Catholic women in healthcare. She's like, this is isolating. It's isolating to be a Catholic woman in healthcare. And I want to create a network of other Catholic women in healthcare, who can get together, who can support each other, pray, or just provide resources and speak about, what are some of the challenges, and really foster. So I think really opening up all of these avenues, and areas for the full breadth of who we are as a church, is one of the unique things that we can do. And also it's a challenge also, in our churches, in our pews, to not keep going to the ones that we see right in front of us.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to talk about one of our sponsors. One of the questions that I get a lot is what are some of the most important resources you can have in ministry? Well, number one is prayer, right? Prayer is essential. Can't overstate that. Second are volunteers. Without volunteers, you're stuck doing it alone. But if there was a third one, I'd have to say it's what you wear, your t-shirts, right? Yeah, you don't have to be in youth ministry to wear really cool graphic Catholic t-shirts. You can be in any ministry, and thank God for organizations like Sacrilegious, where they not only supply you really cool t-shirts, but mugs, socks, things for babies, stickers, all sorts of cool things that will not only make you look awesome, but make you feel holier. And so we'd love to, again, send you to sacrilegious.com to check out all their awesome gear. Click on the show notes below and not only start feeling holier, but look holier too. It's the third most important resource according to this advertisement. All right, back to the show. So it's about making your voice heard. In other words, like how like you said, for those of us in leadership positions, not always going to the people who are right in front of us, but challenging ourselves to look beyond, to not dismiss someone because they're quiet or maybe not there as frequently as you were mentioning before with the daily mass and mass part. But then on the other end, with young women, not to be afraid to speak up, to share their ideas, no matter how small or big they might seem. Um, uh, in their minds and everything like that. And I know that's just so important. And that's something that we definitely see with a lot of leaders, but especially with women in that regards. What advice with, uh, for someone like yourself who's had 20 years in ministry, 20 plus years in ministry and everything like that. She's still young, folks, but no, but 20 years in ministry. I know when we say 20, I've got 20 under my belt. It just makes me feel old, right? But regardless, right? What advice would you give to someone starting out in ministry, especially young women who are looking to pursue a path in ministry and leadership, particularly within the Catholic Church?
I would just say, like, take your time to explore, like all the ministries, that you can be, involved in. I think sometimes we can also get pigeonholed. Is very similar to the young seminarian that becomes a priest, becomes a youth minister.
Oh
Well, the
yeah.
young person that comes into the church, it becomes a youth minister. And many times it's like, this might not be my charism, so
Hmm.
kind of like really take time to explore, just the different areas, because you may think youth ministry, for example. I'm only saying youth ministry because that was my background, but you may decide that you want to do something else. Maybe you want to do children, so you want to do couples, or you want to do, like there's and I think again we can pigeonhole ourselves into just one or the other. Um, Creating a balance, with yourself, especially as a new minister, where bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and we think we can save the world. And know very first, you are not the Messiah. You cannot save them all, and it is okay.
Yeah.
Especially as a women leader, your future leader, do not be afraid to speak your mind. Yes, but in charity, of course. Like, ask for what you want, ask for what you need, and not be afraid to walk away if doesn't meet your expectations. Again, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, we want to accept and embrace, and then what happens at the end of the year, we're burnt out because we didn't get enough money, or we are trying to figure out like how to get a second job or a second part-time, because we, like there's just so much. So it's just like, go in, understand your value, your worth, and what you have to offer. But also be okay with leaving ministry if you're being called to. I think many times we can stay in a position way too long because ministry is all we've done, and we
Mm.
haven't taken the opportunity to hone in on other skills that can be transferable in other areas. And then we get stuck and feel like this is all I have to do. So it's really like about understanding who you are, where you can go, what are your skills, where they can be used. And it's okay to, just explore other avenues, and make yourself well-rounded and have fun. You have a great, support network. Friendships, is always important. Do not let ministry get in the way of your life.
Mm.
you know Make sure that there's a balance and that you are having enough time for play, because ministry can be consuming, especially, as if you're unmarried, they can think, oh, you have all of the time in the world. And again, I've seen many ministers that within a year are burnt out. No,
Yeah.
create balance and create boundaries from the beginning. It's going to just get you much, much further.
So let's get a little personal, if you
Um,
don't mind. Like, I mean, I know we've gotten personal on conversations before, but inviting the audience, like, what are some of the challenges that you've faced, over your tenure in ministry, right? You started out as a youth minister, and you became a director in one of the largest dioceses in the country, and now you're, overseeing this large ministry and connecting women with mentors and everything like that. What are some of the challenges that you face, and what were some things that really helped you kind of navigate through some of those obstacles, or climb up those hills, or whatever analogy we want to fit in there?
within the diocese, I'm sorry, froze a little bit right before it, so I'm just trying to make a thread and connection.
No, no, no. Just throughout, just in leadership in general, right? Like, starting out in youth ministry, what were some of the challenges you faced there? Diocesan ministry, just being a leader in the church. Like, what are some of those challenges, and what are some of those things that you faced, that and resources that you received to help you overcome those things?
I would say, especially in diocese, there isn't a lot of formation for lay leaders, for
Mm.
diocesan leaders. There's a lot of formation for parish lay leaders,
Mm.
because the diocese does does a lot of those formation, but there isn't a lot of formation for diocesan like leaders, especially from like an HR point of view.
Mm.
They just kind of like, and I'm gonna say yes, I was blessed to move across different different positions in the diocese, but I didn't receive any like training on how to manage a staff. I went and looked that on my own, and thank you, Christopher Wesley and Maverick Youth Ministry that, yes, it's a plug or not, but
Shameless
I
plug,
looked
but I'll accept it. I'll allow it.
at, I mean, because like, during the last, couple of years when I had to manage my own staff, that was extremely challenging. And I think I wouldn't say it was one of my low points because I absolutely loved my staff, but it was challenging for me as a leader because I did not have the right kind of, I wouldn't say support because yes, I did receive the support from, my boss and all, but like the really kind of training, even how do you just just hold,
Accountability and things like that, right? Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it's just like you're almost guessing, and again, because it's ministry, you're just like, oh, but I feel bad if I tell them that they're not doing their job
Yeah.
correctly or to your expectations, or am I the one who's setting expectations that are a little higher and not, and and HR just was like, well, just document everything, it's just there's just so much nuance, and those last 5 years, I would say, it was completely very challenging and a little lonely and isolating because I did not, I was always feeling like I was not making the right choice or the right decision until like, I'm like, I need help. And I came, you and I spoke and, this, it just led to where, where we are and where I am right now, where eventually I needed to come to the point. They were like, okay, maybe I've gotten as far. And that was a humbling moment for me. Maybe I've gotten as far in this ministry as I needed to, and maybe I'm the one who's staying a little beyond, and I'm honest. I can be vulnerable, yes, and that's to my point earlier in ministry. Sometimes we can stay beyond because we're comfortable and we're afraid of what's next.
Mm.
But if we believe that we're guided by our Lord, and we believe that we're discerning correctly, and we've examined everything, then we have to trust and take that leap of faith, and know that God is going to catch you, on the flip side, right? On the other end. But I had to look for that support on my own. I had to kind of like, figure that out. So I think that was just extremely challenging. However, with that said, I do owe a debt of gratitude for my ministry in the Archdiocese of New York. Speaking of noticing young people in gifts, it was, I started in the Archdiocese of New York as I wouldn't say as a temp. From a temp, I became an administrative assistant in the Hispanic ministry office.
Mm.
But my background was in fashion design. So I did merchandising. I thought I was going to be working for Ralph Lauren,
Right.
New York City on Madison Avenue, which
There
I
you go.
had. And those were my summer jobs. I worked in the
Mhm.
Ralph Lauren store on Madison Avenue. And that was, what I thought I was going to be doing.
Right.
But then, God in his funny way brings me to the Archdiocese through just different ways. And I started as a temp in between jobs.
Mm.
And 20 years later, there I was. But it was, yes, what I want to say is that, on the flip side, I do owe a debt of gratitude because if it wasn't, even for the challenges and just the opportunities offered to me in the Archdiocese, I don't think I would be the leader I am today. And a lot of what I learned today, even the risk taken, I do owe it to, my years in the diocese. However, obviously there were just certain elements that, that would have wanted a little bit more support, and whether I could have asked or not, neither here nor there. I did it. Here we are. But yeah, I would say that my years in the diocese did form me, for my leadership and who I am.
And I think I appreciate you saying what you said about lay leadership and how there does need to be a little bit more support out there. And I can relate a lot to having to go out there myself to find these resources, right? And and you're hoping and you're taking a risk, right? Especially if it costs money or time or not just time meeting on Zoom but traveling to these conferences, these events, and these workshops, and wondering, okay, what am I going to get in return, or like, how is this going to benefit me in the long run? It definitely is that risk out there. When it comes to Given, right, Given Institute, I'm sure a lot of the women who are coming to you are well. I'm not going to make that assumption, but I guess the question is, how do women hear about Given? Like, when they're coming to you, when they're coming to the conference, or reaching out to you guys through the website, like, how are they hearing about you? How are you guys reaching out to more women and letting them know that this is a resource to help them grow in their leadership?
Well, interesting enough, speaking about diocese, one of the things that we're hoping to foster, because again, we don't keep anything, we don't keep them. It's
Mhm.
not like you're going to a conference and then you become part of this bubble. Like, no, like our job is to equip them and send them back,
Okay.
send them forth. We don't, don't do anything after, other than like the second part of my title is I'm the alumni director. So my role is also to keep in touch with the women who have been through our program, connect them, network. They can reach out to us after they're done, if they still need, like, if they're in transition and would like a mentor to just for a one-time conversation. So that's some of the benefits for being part of our program. But we want the diocese and parishes to invest in these women,
Mhm.
so like it's because it can, again, to the challenges, so it can be isolating. Sometimes these women are paying on their own and so on, and we're like, how great would it be if a parish sends five women, five emerging leaders from their parish who's going to come immediately back, and you're going to be the recipient of these women on fire.
Mhm.
Right. So that's one of the things that, and we asked before, we obviously have scholarships. So we asked, why don't you ask your parish, and sometimes they're afraid because they're like, we don't know where to go. Right. Or we're afraid that they're going to say no. But also like working with dioceses, that they can also work with their parishes to highlight one to, five leaders from different parishes, that the diocese invests in this, because it is a leadership, it is a leadership opportunity for women. And interesting, many dioceses who we have connected with love to send them, because we're like, unfortunately, we don't have anything for young women here that are
Mhm.
specifically for young women, just for young women. And what they receive at Given really forms them as a Catholic female leader, as a Catholic woman,
Yeah.
leadership in the world, no matter where she's called. So thankfully, we've been able to make some connections with some amazing dioceses who funded their up to five women, to attend the conference. And a lot of these action plans are going to directly benefit them.
Mhm.
And then guess what? These are your young adults who can become part of like a focus group or a council to continue to further the work in your own backyard. So that's, to your question, that's one of the ways that we're hoping. That's our preferred way. We want the young women to say, I've heard it from my diocese, or I heard
Mhm.
it from a communication in my parish or from my pastor. But thankfully, because we already have about 600 women in our network, a lot of them come because other young adult women have referred them, like, you have to try this. So it's beautiful when we have the connections of women who have been in our program, who refer them to it. We have active social media, so where we have messages and just inspirations, and we highlight a lot of these action plans as well, and some of the women who are doing amazing things. So women usually contact us through there. Thankfully, we also have great partners and people in podcasts who give us plugs on the podcast. So we'll have women who would say, "Oh, I heard you on so and so podcast when this, so and so speaker, mentioned." So yeah, so we're thankfully getting the word out there. But again, our preferred, what we would want is that every woman says, "I heard it," or "My diocese is sending me, my parish is sending me," because we really want to foster these communities on more on the local level.
No, that's awesome. So, and it's good to hear that, like, a lot of, it sounds like a lot of ways that people are hearing about Given or coming to us through word of mouth. And
Mhm.
it's awesome to hear when dioceses or parishes are sponsoring people. And I'm sure, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I'm sure there are ways that, myself or someone who's listening to this could sponsor an attendee
Mhm.
to participate in Given. Yeah, again, even though it's not for me, what I've seen, having four sisters, married to a wonderful woman, mother who raised me hard. It's great to see just all the great work that Given Institute's doing. So I take joy in it, even though there's so much I receive, just not directly because it's not for
Mhm.
me. Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to interrupt the show. I know you're having such a great time listening to our conversation, but I wanted to tell you about CP Plus. That's the church podcast premium subscription. I know you're like, well, why do I need to subscribe and pay something for a subscription when I can get it for free? Well, one, you don't have to deal with ads like this. Two, we would love to send you the episode earlier. Three, you would get a discount with 4 Marks Printing, which are the people that make awesome shirts like this one. If you're not watching, but you're listening, just trust me, the shirt is totally cool. It's really awesome. You don't want to miss it. Plus, you get a free subscription to MYM Premium, Marathon Youth Ministries newsletter, where we deliver you resources for you, for your team to help you grow. You support Ministry Training Resource, which is basically an organization that does research that helps us develop the profession of ministry. And you get some really cool producer credits. I mean, what's better than being a podcast producer? Absolutely nothing. So for $6.99 a month, I know it sounds like a lot, but instead of buying that cleaning gel for your car, yeah, I know it exists. Instead, sign up for this Church Podcast Plus, CP Plus. Just go to thechurchpodcast.org, click on the show notes below. Anyway, back to the show. Cynthia, it's been great having you on the show, just because I know I've really appreciated getting to know you over the years. So as much as I'd love to continue to talk about giving, we're coming to that time where we do this thing with all of our guests, and that's the final 5 questions. And it's 5 questions we ask all of our guests. So are you ready for this?
Okay,
All right.
let's try it.
So here we go. Question number 1. In addition to prayer, what's one tangible tool or resource that has helped you be your most productive self?
I would have to say creating a routine that I can keep that includes exercise.
Okay.
In addition, to my prayer, especially working from home, it can be very challenging to just roll up to your computer and start your workday. So I'd say, creating a constant wake up time that includes prayer and exercise. So I love to run, and just to different circumstances in my life, I had to put that on hold, and I notice it. So we're physical, mental, spiritual beings, right? And when one is off, everything else feels it. And I notice that when I don't get my physical activity in, it affects everything else. So I'm being intentional about making sure that there's some physical activity involved in my day, but also cutting myself some slack that if I do need to sleep in because I had a bad night, it's okay, just pivot. So because sometimes I will be very hard on myself because I didn't keep my routine, and I was just like, no, it's
Yeah.
okay. I needed that extra minute. So yeah, creating a routine that includes especially physical activity is something that, especially working from home, that I've noticed has made a great difference in my energy level and my focus for the day.
Yeah, I think we forget how tied our physical health is tied to our mental health and our emotional and our spiritual health, and how they're just all tied together. I was just talking to someone earlier today who was struggling with that. They were like struggling with clarity on where God was leading them, and they had been through a little bit of physical trauma recently. And I was just like, well, you're physically recovering, and just think about when you're sick, you're cloud minded and you can't think straight and everything like that. Same sort of thing happens there. So yeah, when we physically take care of ourselves, like you said, and I love running too, right? It just, for me, I'm sure it does for you, clears that mind. It's not just about the, getting the heart rate up and everything, but just like freeing that mind, especially when you're going to be focusing on a screen all day. It's key. It's definitely key. All right. Question number 2. What are you currently reading, watching, or listening to that you feel like everyone has to experience? And it doesn't have to be church related or anything like that, but what is something that you're just reading, watching, or listening to that you think everyone else has to experience?
Well, I don't know if everyone has to experience it because, for everyone has a different taste, but I would say 3 times the charm for me in Bible in a year.
Okay.
Okay. This is the 3rd time I've tried it, and I'm already up to 136, whatever today was. I'm actually, and again, back to the tool, creating a consistent time for me to listen. Before I was like, oh, I'll listen to it when I walk, or I listen to it whenever. But making it part of my morning and my kind of the cadence of my morning has absolutely helped me keep track, and I am on track. 3 times. Um, And what I absolutely love, like I love to pray with the Psalms, for example.
Mm.
And but sometimes when David speaks about enemies and all this whatever it's happening, you're just like, really, what was happening? Like it just seems so abstract, right?
Yeah.
But for example, at this time we're actually covering David, and I love that like you get to hear what inspired that song. And for
Mm.
me, that has been transformative and really understanding and really getting into the root of, obviously there's always phrases and verses in the song that speak to me, but then there's some that I'm like, but now really understanding, oh, okay, it's because your son was persecuting you, and that sucks,
Right.
Absalom.
Yeah.
You know, now it's just like, oh, okay, and for me, that's just, I've enjoyed that and kind of like really bringing the scripture. I mean, scripture is always transformative and comes to life differently. But in this, and just in this sense, being intentional has really been, amazing. So I would say like everyone should give it a try because it is great. It is really great to make those connections. And on a non-churchy, I love reading, like listening to books that are stories or like mysteries, and
Hmm.
kind of like it transports my mind, and it feels like I'm listening to a juicy gossip or something like
Hey,
that.
we all have our guilty pleasures.
I'm
It's
listening
okay.
to this book called The House. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's called The House of Pines. It's just it's an audiobook, and it's a story about someone who saw their best friend die right in front of them, and they blamed her boyfriend, and he was found not guilty. But then many years later, another woman dies in the same way, and
Mm.
who was in front of her, her ex boyfriend. So now she's gonna prove what happened many years ago is related to now. So again, I think it just transports your mind, and I just love listening to like mystery and cases and things like that. So
Awesome. Awesome. No,
yeah.
that's good. That's good. And it's funny. I sensed a little pause after you said listening to books versus reading. Like, I have no shame in listening and reading books. I just love consuming it as much as possible. So I
Yeah.
appreciate those recommendations. All right. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. What's the worst ministry or leadership advice that you've ever gotten from someone regarding the work that you do?
I mean, I wouldn't say it was like advice, but more of a leadership reference of,
Okay.
when I began in ministry as a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed person, I wanted to give my all to the church, much to the detriment of my own health, my
Mm.
family, and certain leaders that I used to work with, because they wanted to get all of your energy, would make me feel bad
Mm.
for missing out on ministry things. And I'm talking about like diocese. I'm talking about like more like local ministry, like that you belong. For missing out on ministerial commitments to go, let's say, to my niece's birthday. And I know that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm sure that's not the case everywhere, but at someone that could have been detrimental to someone who is new in the faith. And I say this because I was new in the faith. I grew up Catholic, but I did not begin practicing until I was a young adult. So now I have this huge encounter with the risen Christ, and I want to learn everything about it, put my hands in everything. And if I didn't have the balance that I did, or met other people who were helped me create that balance, I could have walked away and be like, no, this is not for me. And unfortunately, that happened to many young adults that started on the journey with me because they didn't know how to create that balance between personal and ministry. So, um, and that's what I'm saying. It's not like one advice or the other advice, but mine are kind of like a way of leadership. And I just caution, especially new leaders, just to be, if it doesn't feel right, it's not right. So always, trust your intuition and your discernment.
Well, and that kind of leads us into the fourth question of what message you would give to new, especially ecclesial ministry leaders. And it sounds like set boundaries, right? I mean, to set boundaries.
Yes.
And it goes back to what you were saying in question number one, right? Having that routine. Um, you know, that is it fair of me to say, like, it sounds like that routine helps create that framework of staying within, an arena that there's freedom, but there's also protection, for lack of a better term,
Mhm.
so that you don't burn yourself out, you don't wear yourself out, you don't, like you said, put your health mental, physical, spiritual health at risk, right? I mean, and I think that's so important. Yeah,
Yes.
for
Yes,
sure.
no, absolutely. And, and again, it's to that, like, I think I listened to Catherine Angulo's, interview with you. And it's just like, just because it's ministry doesn't mean that that's it, that that's all I'm going to do. Like, create balance. You are a human being, with a life, with a family, and this is your gift. It shouldn't be something that somebody's robbing you of. It's in somebody that it's like demanding of you.
Mhm.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
This is your gift to the world, to the church, to God. This is your response back to God's invitation. And it should always be that. Every ministry should be a response to God's invitation to you. It's not your will, right? I mean, it is, it's not what you want to do, what other wants to do. Is really what God invites you to do. And especially, I think that back to giving, that's like one of our pillars is receive the gift you are, realize the gifts you've been given, and respond with the gift that only you can give.
Mm.
Everything we receive, we freely give back. So it's always a reminder that at the end of the day, it's God's work, not yours.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. Last question, Cynthia. You're right there at the finish line of these questions. But what is your biggest hope for the church at this time?
The young women, these young women, and I don't know if it's like what I'm hoping for or my hope, like, it's just honestly what these young women come up with. I'm like, gosh, they're smarter than me. No, not smarter, but obviously they have different gifts than me, right? Yes, they're amazing. And if we really provide these opportunities for women to develop, like, it'll continue to transform our church.
Mm.
If these women really execute all of these plans wherever they are, starting from the ground up. And I think that it's what brings me hope, and I think this is why I love just being where I am, because it gives you insight into people that you probably wouldn't know, or ideas and gifts that you wouldn't know just by sitting in your pew. But these are like women with amazing, amazing ideas that really come from prayer and really come from something that they feel God has been placing in their hearts. And if that doesn't give you hope, I don't know what will. That women are
Mm.
really listening into their heart to what God is communicating to them. It's so hopeful. And that is my hope, that more and more people really take the time to listen to the voice of God and not be afraid to respond to the fiat, as Our Lady, not be afraid to give their own fiat.
And to cultivate more of that, I'm hearing that we as leaders need to be able to invite, especially women, to share their ideas, to step into these roles and opportunities, and not in a way of feeling threatened, but more in a way of the fact that this is only going to build the kingdom of God, and to expand God's love to the ends of the earth. And so I think that's awesome, and it's amazing. And Cynthia, again, appreciate all that you've shared. Now, if people want to connect with you or the Given Institute, how can people find you?
Well, they can find us on YouTube. We have our own YouTube channel, Given Institute. Everything is Given Institute, Given Institute. Obviously on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, right? X. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
You can tell I'm not that much on Twitter. X, not TikTok yet, but and then our website is www.giveninstitute.com.
Okay.
So you can find information about who we are, who's engaged. You can read some of these action plans that I spoke about in our alumni story, so you can see for yourself the inspiration behind some of these women.
Awesome. Well, we'll have all those links in our show notes so that if people want to connect with Cynthia or the Given Institute, they can definitely do that there. And Cynthia, when the event happens in DC, we'll have to try to connect. I'll see if I can come down and we'll grab a cup of coffee or something like that. But it's always a pleasure to chat with you. We miss you up here north, but you're only a Zoom call or a video call or a phone call away. But Cynthia, again, thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Okay.
This has been a production of Marathon Youth Ministry, the church podcast talking all things ministry, produced by Stephen Herrera and Be Well Creative. Music provided by Loco Joseph. No animals were hurt in the production of this podcast. Please be sure to tip your waiters. See you next time.